Hello, friends. Welcome you to this smooth MOOC on universal design, accessibility planning, and social inclusion. This MOOC has been created under the Global Center of Spatial Methods for Urban Sustainability at the Technical University of Berlin, funded by the German Academic Exchange Services, that is DAAD. These modules have been created and curated under the aegis of Laboratory of Inclusive Design at IIT Roorkee, India. Welcome you to this module, that is module 3, which is titled as Universal Design Theory and Principles. Friends, my name is Professor Gaurav Raheja, and I am a professor at the Department of Architecture and Planning, IIT Roorkee, who shall take you through this module. In this module, we shall focus on the following four learning objectives. The first one is to understand the theory of universal design. Second, to reflect upon the evolution of universal design as a phenomenon. Third, it shall give us insights into the seven principles of universal design. And finally, we will also understand the latest and the state of the art understanding of universal design through the lens of the eight goals. Let's begin with this session now. Friends, we had discussed this in the earlier modules also, that as part of this entire curated MOOC, we have been oscillating between these three terms: universal design, accessibility, and social inclusion. The question is, how do we link all three of them? Well, I would like to clarify to all of us that universal design stands for a theory, it's an approach, it was a movement, it was a way of thinking. Accessibility is a means, it's like a vehicle, it's like something through which we intend to achieve the larger goal, and that goal is of social inclusion. We are all looking for an aspiration that how can the world, the cities, whether from global south or global north, reflect a better and a more inclusive character such that individuals with diverse set of needs can participate in it in a meaningful manner. This cannot be achieved if accessibility is not completely, I would say, ingrained into our environments. And for making things better in terms of access and inclusion, I believe it's important and crucial to therefore look back into the theoretical insights of how the world has evolved in its knowledge, and universal design remains one such theory which talks about it. Universal design rests across the world in many manifestations, sometimes known by different terminologies as well. We will get into a little history of how this term evolved, but also to see in a simplified way, universal design rests around the intersection of usability, accessibility, and inclusivity. Universal design is an intent of a positive frame of terminology and theoretical approaches to look into our environment and design needs such that people with disabilities and others on the lines of margin do not get excluded and stigmatized. To take it a little deeper in terms of the historical evolution, we find universal design originated in around 1985 and above through the hands of architect Ronald Mace. Ron Mace is well known as the father of universal design, who basically brought in this whole concept after a series of evolutions in the sector of disability, and by raising this inquiry on how can we bring a shift to design thinking into the built environments and products and everyday use through a shift in a positive frame of its language, through a positive shift in way of its expression, and eventually bringing a positive shift in the way of experience. So this whole manifestation started with Ron Mays as the father or pivotal, uh, I would say, guru from the Indian side. But in the same way, I would say he led many such movements, and which was further co-joined by many other scholars, designers, architects, policymakers across the world. But primarily, we owe some credits of this to the United States of America. So if you see the evolution of universal design around 1950s in Europe, Japan, and United States of America, through the World War there was a huge hue and cry. And it is at around that time when the soldiers with amputations were returning back homes, the built environment became a huge subject because it posed as an obstacle to many people with lower limb impairments and amputations. And therefore, barrier free as a design term began to evolve and start its orientation to remove obstacles from the built environments for persons with disabilities after in response to the aftermath of the World War II. 1960s, what happened? New standards and policies were established in the US, such as American Standard Specifications for making buildings and facilities accessible to and usable by the physically handicapped. At that time, the term physically handicapped was a prevailing identity for persons with disabilities. Looking at it further, in 1960s, also parallelly in 1963, the author Slewin Goldsmith, who was also an architect, created building guidelines for wheelchair users in the UK. 1963, the Architectural Barriers Act was positioned in the United States for specially buildings which were owned or leased buildings, including restrooms. 1970s further saw the fueling of civil rights, women rights, and the disability rights movement growing up and spreading across through Europe and North America. To the extent it gave rise to concepts like nothing about us without us. 1985, we saw the concept of barrier free and accessible design evolving into a new concept as universal design by architect Ron Mays in the United States of America. And this concept of universal design integrated the ideas of accessibility and barrier free design towards an inclusive future as an intent and an attempt. In 1980s, three centers were founded in the US. The Institute for Human-Centered Design at Boston, which was founded in 1978, the Center for Inclusive Design and Environmental Access, which is popularly known as the IDEA Center at the University of Buffalo at New York in 1984, and the Center for Universal Design at North Carolina University 1989. Having understood this, the 90s was the era of further transformation, and this included the development of Americans with Disabilities Act, which is popularly known as the ADA. And in 1993, Design for All Europe was established. 1995 was a time when the DDA, which is popularly known as the Disability Discrimination Act, was passed in the United Kingdom, which prohibits discrimination against persons with disabilities in relation to employment, the provision of goods and services, education, and transportation. So, broadly, if we see in 1999 further, the Helen Hamlin Center for Design was established to focus on works and design towards inclusivity for persons with disabilities. We see this entire decade of the 90s, a lot of policy based improvisations, transformations, and rights based interventions for our governance, policies, and environments was done. The impact of this was visible henceforth in the built environments and the social environments as well over the next couple of decades. Friends, while in this session we are discussing about universal design from a global view, I must highlight here that 1995 was also the year when Persons with Disabilities Act in India was also formed. However, I must add here that in 1995 the DDA Act of the UK was passed, which in 2010 was transformed into the Equality Act. Moving further, in the next decade, 2001 was very crucial because the World Health Organization redefined the term disability. What we assumed or kind of worked from 1980s till the 2000 was the linear understanding. Beyond 2001, the WHO talked about the interrelationships between the activities, the functional limitations, and the consequences how the impairment and disabilities lead to handicap, with the personal and environmental factors, which we discussed in the previous modules, was a game changer. And 2006 became further important for the history of the evolution of universal design and the sector of disability because the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Most nations of the world ratified this convention, which makes it relevant for all of us to therefore understand how do we align to the Convention of the Rights for Persons with Disabilities. In 2008, the first graduate program focusing on inclusive design was established at the University at Buffalo. In 2009, the Norwegian government published an action plan with a goal to have the country universally designed by 2025. So, if we see overall, we would find that universal design remains an evolving and an emerging concept, and it has been a game changer and the transformative actions for our environments. It has been contextualized to the current state of art thinking, including developments in science and technologies. But the important part of this whole mission is that how do we minimize the barriers and make more seamless transitions between diverse range of people and the built and the social environments. So if you go back again, the early definition of universal design was something like this, coined by the architect Ronald Mace. The design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. I highlight the term without the need for adaptation or specialized design. Ron was focusing upon eliminating the need of a specialized design by bringing in corporations in the design itself and this would be only possible if we invest in study, research and observations of diverse needs of diverse range of people and intervene through design. I think this was a very inspiring way of looking forward because most designs for people with disabilities were considered special, exclusive, and many a times rejected on accounts of economic principles of cost enhancements. However, if you see the further transitions, this is Professor Edward Steinfield, who has been the director of the IDEA Center at State University of Buffalo in New York. He defines universal design in the evolutionary process as a process itself. There's a huge shift now. Universal design is being defined as a process of creating products that are accessible to people with a wide range of abilities, disabilities, and other characteristics. Friends, we are moving into a immensely important step of inclusivity. And it's crucial, therefore, to pay a little attention to how these definitions are enlarging the scope of, of this entire theory of universal design. If universal design becomes a process to understand this, we believe design for lifespan must become a norm. We need not design everything for a very short term or very specific group of people only, but rather consider lifespan as a larger ambit of that. And if we see this, the lifespan is not linear. Lifespan, as a fair representation of a bell shaped curve, reflects that at certain stages of life, we are at the peak of our performance and abilities, but there are times when it declines. This can change. It could be some for some people go like this, for some people it could go like that, for some people it could go like this as well. The idea is to say that lifespan is not linear. It can change with the range of abilities and can have undulations in the range of expectations and support systems that we need. So, if we understand this better, I believe it would be the most crucial aspect of universal design to be making our efforts in creating environments for better inclusivity. Looking at this graph, it talks about dependency and autonomy during life, something that we are already talking from the previous graph. As a child, our dependency levels could be 100% and we need caregiving. As growing adults and caregivers, we are at the highest level of peak efficiency and we are kind of interdependent. And as we advance in age further, we further reach a situation of high dependency. If we understand this even better, we will realize in terms of infrastructures, in terms of any form of design and policy, are we able to consider the needs of this range of segment of people as a lifespan in our regular processes of design? Process of design does not limit it to the profession of design. We would extend this to the process of governance. We would extend this to the process of enforcements, implementations, the legal frameworks, and henceforth the whole entire environment of institution, political organizations, and the social sector by itself needs to reflect upon this because this is a human rights issue. If we understand this so far, we can also reflect on one of the references of the well known Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. As a designer, as an architect, we always reflect that the spatial, the form, the material, the technological, the services, the engineering needs, how they are responded through the built environment. And within that, if we look at the human as a whole, in various stages of evolution, evolves from the physiological level needs of food, water, rest to the next level of security and safety, the level of belongingness and needs for love, the needs of self esteem, and eventually realizing self through self actualization are different stages in which diverse humans evolve in their own way. So, to treat all humans only at physiological levels perhaps would not be fair. Universal design advocates us to be sensitive that we would also need the sensory, the psychological, psychosocial, and self fulfillment needs of well being, which all need to be catered in this holistic manner. So here is something called as the Winnet model, something which can be used practically when we approach any design, any policy, and any creation for that matter of any environmental decision. We always have the larger whole population that we intend to cater. But what happens is, by virtue of resources, by virtue of certain logical constraints, we are able to identify who is the ideal population that actually needs what we are intending to deliver. And that range continues this oscillation to negotiate the maximum range possible. Friends, we admit that universal design at a theoretical level is an inspiration. But when it translates into the ground reality of practice, it always has a negotiation element in it between the costs, between the space, and between the resources. And also, how do we get the maximum population benefited by a particular design? So sometimes what we intended as a whole population and what we intend as the final population who's included reflects the gaps between how theoretically we perceived and how in reality we achieved. And that determines us. If we use this in a more aware manner, we can ask this question on who is the target population for this environment. I think this Winnet model can help us strategize better ways of understanding and developing plans and frameworks for execution such that the maximum range of population could derive this benefit with the theoretical aspiration of the whole population. We have discussed this before also, but I would highlight this again here as the person environment model describing the range of fit. The range of fit refers to the overlap between the person, the human, and the environment in which they are situated. Because, as we have discussed earlier, for example, a person who is having special needs of a sensorial character, for example, vision impairment, wants to use a certain environment, let's say an educational environment. Now, the person has a certain boundary condition for his or her adaptation. He or she needs support for being able to navigate through a system. To the extent, it's not just about reaching the educational infrastructure, it's also managing in the infrastructure and finally being able to accept the services that are being provided in an inclusive manner. So, is the education inclusive? Is it accessible? Also determines the adaptation of the environment. So, this range of fitness is actually overcome by this understanding of P and E as variables, which is also indicated in the new understanding of the disability models established by the World Health Organization. The larger the range of fitness, the more inclusivity we would be able to achieve. And this is something, if we remember, we can use this framework to see how much adaptation our environment is able to deliver. People from the medical science might be focusing on a person at physiological, cognitive, sensory, body, and other levels, while many of us who come from the disciplines of architecture, social science, design, planning are actually intending to focus the environmental side of fitness. The idea is it is therefore an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and a transdisciplinary approach that is required to work towards the fitment between person and environment. And if we do this well, I think we would have achieved the task of inclusive design to a great extent. Moving forward, friends, as the other learning objective, we shall now understand What are the key guiding principles of universal design? They have been coined with various terminologies like the equitable use, flexibility in use, perceptible information, simple and intuitive use, tolerance for error, low physical effort, size and shape for approach and use. Developed in 1997 by a working group of architects, product designers, engineers, and environmental design researchers led by architect Ronald Mays, these seven principles actually define to a large extent the whole intent of universal design theory. These principles, in my understanding, go far beyond their application by not just limiting to architecture, but to many fields of life, including science and technology, including innovations, including sectors from politics to governance to policy to various other ranges of our organizational setups. Let's get to understand what they all mean. Equitable use refers to that when the design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. For example, powered door with sensors is convenient for all shoppers, especially if the hands are full. It provides an equitable use as an opportunity. Equitable use refers to providing the same means of use for all users, identical whenever possible, equivalent when not. It avoids segregating or stigmatizing any user. Provisions for privacy, security, and safety are equally available to all users, is what it provides as a direction, and ensuring that the design is appealing to all users, at no point it stigmatizes its usage. Hands-free car boot opening or the platform sliding out to close the gaps helps everyone equally as a, in terms of children, baby strollers, luggage and cane. This image is from the Nanakuma stations, Nanakuma line metro stations in the city of Fukuoka, Japan. So if you'll find this, this kind of illustrations uh, are also available in our everyday lives. Sometimes it just requires us this conscious understanding to appreciate these design principles in our everyday life and products as we are evolving further. Flexibility in use. It refers to the design that accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities. Wide range of individual preferences, I repeat. So, understanding that the different preferences may emerge from socio-cultural aspects and sometimes from body comfort and psychological needs as well. Here is an example of scissors, be it large grip scissors or be it scissors for people with who are left-handed users. How do we have those scissors designed? So large grip scissors accommodates people how they use with either hand and allows alternation between the two in highly repetitive tasks. It is just one example. I'm sure there would be many ways in which we can talk about flexibility in our everyday lives. It provides choice in methods of use. It accommodates right or left-handed access and use. It facilitates users' accuracy and precision. It provides adaptability to the user's space. Slow movers, fast walkers, and all could be accommodated in the similar environment if flexibility is embedded as a design principle. Moving forward, height adjustable basins in furniture. Likewise, this hydraulic push basin, at the same time, the standing table also becoming a seating table provides examples of flexibility in use in our day-to-day lives. Simple and intuitive use. Use of design is easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current concentration level. Simple and intuitive usage refers to also people many times in conditions of, of cognitive impairments and requiring much more easier answers and responses from the environment as a support. Eventually, it helps everyone. For example, public emergency stations utilize recognized emergency colors and a simple design to quickly convey function to the passersby. And this, when it becomes similar across or standardized across all cultures, it becomes intuitive for us to reflect upon these emergency needs through these support systems. It also refers to eliminating unnecessary complexity, being consistent with user expectations and intuitions, accommodating a wide range of literacy and language skills, arranging information consistent with its importance, and providing effective prompting and feedback during and after task completion. For example, the signage on the flooring reflects the way and guiding navigation for an intuitive set of direction. The button for opening the door is simplified by making it more intuitive at placing it at lower height, also using a high contrast and with an iconic representation of a person with disability and a statement or a phrase written on top of it as an instruction, push to open. Simplifying by visibility in color contrast, by reducing the height to make it more approachable, and adding more contrast, simplifying by communicating from a distance, reflects how intuitively we can design our environments. And this is an example of information designed in a simple and intuitive manner. Perceptible information is the fourth principle that talks about that the design communicates necessary information effectively to the user regardless of ambient conditions or the user's sensory abilities. This reflects, for example, small bumps on a cell phone keypad tell the user where important keys are without requiring the user to look at the keys. However, we have moved from these keypad phones to sometimes these smartphones, but the relevance of these keys does reflect how we use also in our remote controls these perceptible information. Perceptible information talks about use for different modes, that is, pictorial, verbal, tactile, for redundant presentation of essential information. It expects to provide adequate contrast between essential information and its surroundings. It expects to maximize legibility of essential information and differentiate elements in ways that can be described, to provide compatibility with a variety of techniques or devices used by people with sensory limitations. Friends, perceptible information enhances and widens the scope for inclusivity for people with sensory and perceptual challenges. It's crucial for us again to be sensitive to understanding the diverse range of perceptions such that we can integrate all of them through design by creating better opportunities here. For example, the icons, the signage consistency design, the elder friendly phones with pictograms for emergency and close contacts reflect examples of intuitive understanding. Tolerance for error. The design minimizes hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. This reflects how we can tolerate the errors without basically getting injured or getting into situations which are inconvenient. A very good example of tolerance for error is also the Control Z key on the keyboard, which gives us the option of undoing. But let's look at this example as well. For example, a sequential trip trigger on a nail gun requires user to activate the safety before pulling the trigger. It minimizes accidents that occur when a user accidentally hits an object or person while pulling the trigger. So design, if done with these integrations, can sometimes be life-saving. For example, extending the handrails by 300 millimeters at the last step of the staircase actually helps in providing balancing while with the moment of inertia of a human body if you're running down the staircase. These kind of little things can provide a tolerance from slippage and making any small error in the coordination of the feet but can prevent a fall. It's very crucial when we are looking at designs of various aspects of our built environments or products. How do we integrate this phenomena such that people feel more safe in those engagements of activities? The tolerance for error highlights to arrange elements to minimize hazards and errors. Most used elements in terms of their isolation or shielding them, providing warnings of hazards and errors, and providing fail-safe features. And it also suggests to discourage unconscious action in tasks that require vigilance. The sensor door, for example, in an elevator, we have seen many a times that it bumps into us and it detects the people but it does not hurt us. So how do we design these doors? The edge protections of walkways as a safety measure for especially people from walking or rolling down the trail, especially with front caster wheels of a baby stroller or a wheelchair. The edge protection is a great example of, of tolerance for error in a built environment. Low physical effort. The design can be used efficiently and comfortably and with a minimum of fatigue. Friends, we all expect to have easy access to things, and low physical effort is one of the representations of that principle. I personally feel this could also be added with low cognitive effort because in many built or other environmental conditions, uh, applying too much of cognition sometimes delays the responses. And if we can make possible information, like I would say, which require low intuition, it would be possible to reduce effort in any which way possible. This enhances effort efficiency. For example, a door lever does not require grip strength to operate and can be operated even by a closed fist or an elbow. So, for people who have upper limb extremities, lack of grip, or amputation, it would be possible to even use an elbow like this to open a door if it has a lever type door handle. So it kind of gives a small example of how we can reduce effort by design. So basically, low physical effort further refers to allow users to maintain a neutral body position, use reasonable operating forces, minimize repetitive actions, and minimize sustained physical effort. Taking it further, the incorporation of sensors in our everyday products, including sanitizer dispenser, travelators, and escalators, which do not require any effort, you just have a board on top of them, reflects examples of design, systems, technologies, and different forms of assistances in everyday life, how they have grown over a period of time as examples of universal design and as examples of these principles in action. The last principle, that is the seventh principle of universal design, refers to size and space for approach and use. Appropriate size and space is provided for approach, reach, manipulation, and use regardless of user's body size, posture, or mobility. It is It is quite an evident phenomena that many a times by virtue of body size or activity size, we need expected larger size and space to maneuver ourselves into the environment. Providing wide gates at subway stations, you must have seen in many mass rapid transit systems like metro rails. One of the gates being wider at those stations accommodates not just wheelchair users but also commuters with packages, luggages, baby strollers, and people with high obesity as well. So size and space refers to the providing of clear line of sight to important elements for any seated or standing user, make reach to all components comfortable for any seated or standing user again, and accommodate variations in hand and grip size while providing adequate space for the use of assistive devices or personal assistants. Many a times in the use of washrooms, we may not find always the appropriate size of the door as the starting point of our interaction to be considering it as usable. So, how do you navigate into a space whose door width does not offer the same size? So, I think these are small sensitive features that we must reflect upon and also appreciate and acknowledge if we find them in our environments. So, as part of this theoretical understanding, this is again from the stations in Fukuoka for the Nanakuma line, which is considered to be one of the very good examples of universal design in action and implementation. The wide gates on the subway with lower height for putting the card and the ticketing systems. Likewise, the tilted mirror, it helps children, wheelchair users, and everyone alike, especially to be able to groom themselves and use the basin in a more efficient manner. Friends, after learning these seven universal design principles, it's time that we also update ourselves through this section on the eight goals that the universal design theory has advanced itself into. There is for some degree of overlap in that, but it's important that we reflect how the current and the contemporary thinking of universal design is further guided by these eight goals. These eight goals reflect body fit, comfort, awareness, understanding, wellness, social integration, personalization, and cultural appropriateness as its key dimensions. And this is developed again through the Center for Universal Design at State University of New York Buffalo in the Idea Center, that this theory has got further propagated towards enlarging the scope of universal design with the contemporary reflections. Let's have a quick look. Body fit refers to accommodating a wide range of body sizes and abilities. Comfort is reflecting upon keeping demands within desirable limits of body function and perception. Awareness refers to ensuring that critical information for use is easily perceived. Understanding, making methods of operation and use intuitive, clear, and unambiguous. For example, the maps in the metro stations. This is just one example. I'm sure all these goals that are being evolved have a much wider connotation than just a singular piece of design or a built environment. We can apply all of them in various segments like policy, governance, and the implementation in built environments as well. Wellness, contributing to health promotion, avoidance of disease, and protection from hazards, is a goal that universal design pursues. Universal design is a goal, is a theory which is propagating the idea of wellness as an inclusive concept. It talks about social integration as its sixth goal, which clearly says treating all groups with dignity and respect. This entire shift in the whole understanding of universal design is such an important revelation in the broader understanding of any sociological, technological, and political evolutions, because this is a very humanistic approach of design which which is intended towards an idea of causing no harm to anyone. Personalization reflects customization, incorporating opportunities by enhancing choice and expression of individual preferences. And finally, it talks about cultural appropriateness. It reflects how respecting and reinforcing cultural values play an important role, and such that the social and environmental context of any design project could therefore be reflected into the cultural appropriateness. This is an example of the hippo roller designs for the women in Africa who would fetch water from several kilometers, and to carry water with keeping pots on the head was one way which further got, I would say, transformed through a design innovation and intervention. So these are like constant journeys of human evolution, and one needs to integrate them as and how we are able to reflect upon a collective understanding. Friends, universal design is not just an idea, nor just a theory, nor just an approach. It's a way of thinking. I believe by all this understanding so far, if it starts sinking into our thought culture, eventually our actions, and no matter what profession we are, it would become part of its everyday engagement as well. So, from here, I welcome you to the landscapes of India with raising this question. So this is the city of Varanasi, the famous ancient Indian city, which is also known as the Temple City. How do persons with disabilities, how do other diverse people engage and interact with these environments of Indian landscapes is something that we shall be discussing in the forthcoming session. So, in this segment of our uh, theories of universal design, I believe we have already learned the evolution of universal design as a concept, the seven principles of universal design, and the eight goals as the final state of the art understanding. I would now welcome you in the module 4 on universal design from Indian perspectives. And until then, I hope you've enjoyed the MOOC so far and will continue to participate in it with further advancements in the understanding of universal design and inclusive environments as a larger concept. I thank you for a very patient listening and look forward to seeing you joining us in the module 4. Thank you once again and all the best for your next endeavors.